Hello everyone and welcome back to another deck guide, this time featuring the newly released Regenesis archetype and the newly supported Eldlich archetype. This is a deck composed of two archetypes that are very focused on maybe not putting the most disruptions on the field, but recurring a ton of resources every turn and just kind of shutting the opponent out in the long game. So if that sounds like fun to you, let's get started. So first up, we have Regenesis Archfiend here. So all of the Regenesis monsters have an effect that they can special summon themselves if you have a monster with 2500 attack or defense on either field or hand, depending on the monster, and all of them have 2500 attack and defense themselves. This means that while they work really well together as a cohesive archetype, they also synergize very heavily with any other monster that happens to have that magic number. So Archfiend here can special summon itself if you reveal another monster with 2500 in your hand. So this is our starter, and as such we play 3, and when it is summoned it allows you to search any other Regenesis card from deck to hand. And then it shares the effect that all of the other Regenesis monsters have, where if it is in your graveyard during the end phase, it just pops right back to your hand to be used again. That is the resource loop that this deck does that is very potent and allows you to outgrind basically anyone. So this is our starter, and next up is one of our best disruptions, and this is Regenesis Sage. So you can see between the two they don't share any real attributes. They have different levels, different attributes, different types, but it's just that 2500 that connects the entire archetype. So to special summon this one, you have to have a monster with 2500 on the field already, which can be the Archfiend if you searched Sage off of Archfiend and then you can just summon Sage straight up, or it can be any of your other monsters in the deck with 2500. This deck does run a decent number of them. And on that note, there are a ton of monsters that are just really good that have that 2500 magic number. I don't run them in this deck, but like Kashtira sees a lot of play with Regenesis because Unicorn specifically has 2500 attack, which makes it fit the bill. But also like Dark Magician, Blue Eyes White Dragon, whatever you want to play, it probably works with Regenesis. So what Sage actually does is whenever an opponent activates a card or effect, you contribute another Regenesis monster you control to negate and destroy. So you cannot tribute itself as cost for that effect, but otherwise it's just an Omni Negate and Destroy, which is a super powerful effect to have. Normally you're going to search Sage off of Archfiend, and then you contribute the Archfiend, and then it comes back on your opponent's end phase anyway, so it's not like you even lost resources in the first place. Next up is Regenesis Warrior, and this one can, same thing, you have to have a monster on the field with the magic number, but it can tribute itself to bounce a monster back to the hand. Not quite as powerful of a disruption, but it is a 1-card disruption. You do not need to tribute another monster, it just tributes himself, and then same thing, he'll come back in phase anyways. Then we've got the titular card Regenesis itself. We play 2 of these, and these are the Rhoda for the deck. It just takes any Regenesis monster, adds it to hand, or sends it to graveyard. Most of the time you're just going to add it to hand, and then if you control a Regenesis, you can add any monster with 2500 attack and defense from deck to hand. We're not really using that part because 2500 attack and defense is quite a bit more limiting than 2500 attack or defense, so there's not nearly as wide of a pool of stuff to grab off of that. But this also helps with recursion. If this card's in your graveyard except the turn it was sent there, you can banish it and special summon a Regenesis from your graveyard. So if for some reason it's returning to your hand on its own got negated, or you don't happen to have a monster to show to summon it, you can use this instead. It also just is an extra material if you want to link one off. It's very versatile recursion. We love it. And last for the Regenesis cards, we play Regenesis Code, one of, and this one allows you to special summon one from deck, but send it to graveyard during your opponent's end phase, which doesn't really matter because it will just come back to your hand anyways on that end phase. This one, however, locks you out of the extra deck for 2 turns until the end of the next turn after it resolves. So it's kind of to be used sparingly unless you are playing a deck that does not use the extra deck very much. We don't use it a whole ton, but we do like some of our extra deck plays quite a bit, so, you know, one Regenesis is probably fine. Once again, it also has recursion, because during your main phase specifically, except the turn this was sent to the graveyard, you can banish it and special summon a banished Regenesis. So if the opponent manages to banish one of your guys, you can still just get it back anyways. The resource loop is difficult to stop here. And then we're on to the next package. We play 3 of Eldlich the Golden Lord. This guy is a funky little card, but he has 2500 attack, which is the magic number for a Genesis, and you can send him and a spell or trap from hand to send a card on the field to the graveyard. So that's for board breaking, but there's also some stuff in his own archetype that you might want to send to the graveyard as well. And then if he's in the graveyard, you can send a spell or trap you control to the graveyard, add him, and then special summon him and give him 1000 more attack until the end of the opponent's turn. So he's huge, he's recursive, he is a board breaker, he's just all around a pretty good guy. And then what you often want to send if you're going first is Cursed Eldland. So this locks you into attacking with zombies, but that's okay because you're going to send it to the graveyard for its effect anyways. It is a continuous spell that allows you to pay 800 life once per turn and add Eldlich himself or another golden land spell or trap from deck to hand, and then if it is sent to the graveyard by any effect, you can send an Eldlich or golden land from deck to graveyard. So this deck plays very heavily out of the graveyard. And what this does is it basically gives you something to banish to get more resources, or it gets your Eldlich himself into rotation. Really just this card is the Swiss Army knife of the deck and allows you to put whatever you need on the field to keep going, basically. Then we play 3 of the newly released Delta of Invitation. So this is a zombie-centric field spell that has a really neat 1-card combo with Eldlich himself. In the deck, you don't even need the Eldlich in hand, because this card allows you to send a level 5 or higher zombie from deck to graveyard. That's always Eldlich in this deck, and then if you have a zombie on the field, you can special summon a token. So that means that you can send Eldlich to get him into rotation, and then send another card to the graveyard, which will have value in the graveyard, to special summon him and then use Delta's other effect to make a token, and then you've got 2 material on the field to do some link stuff, and there's a neat little combo you'll see in the combo section that you can do with that whole thing to get a 1-card Varudris on the field, which is pretty dope. Then we play 2 of Conquistador of the Golden Land. So all of the Eldlich traps, you can kind of adjust the numbers a little bit on these guys. I run a pretty small package so that we have room for more non-engine, but you could run 3 Conquistadors and 2 Huaqueros or what have you, and it will just increase your consistency, and it'll make you better going first, but worse going second. If that's okay with you, then go ahead and do it. So for our Conquistador, this is a continuous trap that when activated you special summon it as a normal monster. It is level 5, which does not really do anything for this deck, but if you control Eldlich when you summon it, you can destroy a face-up card on the field, non-targeting, which is pretty cool. During the end phase, you can also banish this card from your graveyard to set an Eldlixir directly from your deck. So this card is very versatile in its effect. You can either leave it on the field as a destruction, or if you end up sending it for Eldlich's own effect, then on the end phase you still get a card on the field because you can set something directly from the deck. So it is just a great versatile card. Similarly with Huaquero's a little bit worse, but same thing, it special summons itself as a normal monster, and then if you control Eldlich, you can banish a card from either graveyard. DD Crow's less good than targeted destruction, but it's still not bad. And we want to play 1 because that just gives us the opportunity to trigger the second effect more often, because it also can banish on end phase to set an Eldlixir. So, you know, you can get 2 Eldlixirs. What is an Eldlixir, you might ask? Well, that's our next 2 cards. First up is one of the new support cards, Eldlixir of the Exalted Golden Land. So, Eldlixir of the Exalted Golden Land can pay 800 life similarly to the last 2, and special summon as a normal monster. This one is level 10, which is much more relevant because Eldlich himself is level 10, which means we can go into extra deck Xyz plays with these 2 cards. And its actual effect is that when you summon it as a monster, if you control Eldlich, you can return a monster on the field to the hand, which is a bounce, which is cool. It's also non-targeting, that's a disruption. Or, instead of special summoning it, you can recycle your banished Golden Lands or Eldlixir spells, which is great. This deck had a pretty rough time recycling banished materials, like it couldn't do that. It kind of just, once its deck was out of stuff to send to the graveyard, it stopped functioning, so now you can go even longer just by recycling stuff from banish as well as from the graveyard. It's great. And then lastly, for the Eldlich stuff, we play one Eldlixir Scarlet Sanguine. This one allows you to special summon Eldlich from the deck or graveyard. It's great. And then for the rest of the turn, you can only special summon zombies. That does not matter very much because this is a normal speed trap, which means we're going to be special summoning on the opponent's turn. Eldlich as an engine is pretty good at just putting like big bodies on your field to block the opponent's attackers during their turn. It's a little unorthodox to do that rather than destroy their attackers, but with the amount of recursion and extension that we have access to, it's not a bad plan to just throw vomit bodies all over the field. This one can also banish to set a golden land spell or trap from your deck, which that's kind of a resource loop between the older golden land traps and the Eldlixirs, is that the golden lands get Eldlixirs and Eldlixirs get golden lands, so they just kind of constantly cycle between each other and just keep coming out of the deck over and over and over. That's part of our big resource loop. We also play Skill Drain. This card is limited to one, so we only play one, but it is a continuous trap that you activate by paying 1,000 life points and negate the effect of all face-up monsters on the field. So the idea is that Eldlich's effects all come from hand and graveyard, so you don't really care, and all of the trap monsters effects count as trap effects, not monster effects, so they don't get negated by Skill Drain as well. We also just have an easy time putting big bodies on the field, so we normally have the biggest thing on the field, and people just can't contest us through Skill Drain. All of the Regenesises can come back to hand and then special summon even through Skill Drain. They just lose their other effects. It basically just turns the game into a beat stick fest, and we've got some pretty big beat sticks in this deck. Then we play 3 of Bestials, so if you are unaware, the Bestials can banish a light or dark monster in either graveyard and special summon themselves. They all also have 2,500 attack and 2,000 defense, which makes them perfect with the Regenesis engine. Individually, Baldrake lets you tribute a light or dark monster to stop a special summon. The Druos Worm lets you send a special summon monster to the graveyard if it leaves the field, and Magnuma lets you search for one of the other ones on end phase and add it to your hand. So these guys are just like a concise little package. They act as hand traps and disruption that all also has the right number to work with Regenesis, so it bumps up our 2,500 number. Considering Eldlich is the only out-of-engine monster that we have at 25 either way, we want to just have like a critical mass so that we never have Regenesis stuff stranded, and this works pretty well. We then play 10 other hand traps besides the Bestials. I just want to note that Super Poly, we don't use a ton of the extra deck, so we have room for some Super Poly stuff. It's fine. It's a good card. It lets you fusion summon using 2 of your opponent's monsters by discarding another card, and no one gets to react to it, so it's just a great board breaker, and we have room in the extra deck, so we might as well play it. And then, before we get to the extra deck, I just want to bring up Dragon's Mind. So Dragon's Mind is a new counter trap that is for use specifically with the Regenesis archetype. It makes it so you can omni-negate and destroy anything at counter trap speed, which means it's basically unrespondable, as long as you have a monster with 2,500 attack or defense on your field. And then you can also pay 2,500 life to set this every single turn, so it's just a full counter trap every single turn. This card is super good in this deck. I put it in the sideboard because if you are playing in the TCG and you are not sure if you're going to be going first, I would sideboard this card, but bring it in every single time you're going first. If you're playing Master Duel, when this comes to Master Duel, I would probably put a couple of these just in the main deck because you never know. And then extra deck, we've got the other new piece of Eldlich support, which is Angel Kaido of the Golden Land, which has just some of the dopest art in the game. But just as importantly, you can summon it just by tributing one Eldlich, and then when it hits the field, it doesn't actually have any effects in and of itself, but when it leaves the field by any means at all, you can then special summon an Eldlich from either your deck, graveyard, or extra deck, which is really, really cool because that means you can use one Eldlich, go into Angel Kaido, link off Angel Kaido, which immediately triggers to special summon Eldlich the Mad Golden Lord straight from your extra deck. Mad Golden Lord is another level 10, but this one is a huge tower, so he's 3800, 3500, cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, and then once per turn you contribute a zombie monster to change of heart an opponent's card permanently, but during the turn that you take it, you cannot attack or use its effect, but you could grab, something with a negate and then leave it on your board until the next turn, and then you've got a negate live, which is just backbreaking, especially on top of him just being huge and indestructible. It's great. Next up's our Super Poly package, which is Mudragon. You can make this, and then it is Protection, and Garuro, which you can make this, and then when you link it off or send it to the graveyard by any means, you draw a free card. It also does double battle damage, so it can help you close out the game. This deck actually has a pretty easy time closing out the game. We've got just some really huge bodies that we put on the field. We just kind of have to wait for the right moment because we don't want to let our shields down until the opponent is fully under control. We play one Flying Mary the Wandering Ghost Ship, a little bit of a weird card, but this one is used for the one card Delta of Invitation combo. It is a link 2 that allows you to special summon a level 5 or higher zombie that is banished or in your graveyard, and if you do, put this card in your spell and trap zone as a continuous spell. And then while it is a continuous spell, if you have a level 5 or higher zombie on the field, which we normally will, you can target a monster with less attacks than that zombie that you have and destroy it on the field once per turn. It doesn't even send this card to the graveyard. Then we play an IP2 quick link on the opponent's turn into an SP Little Knight for 2 banishes, or into an Underworld Goddess to negate all of the opponent's card effects and stop them from touching the graveyard. Then we play one Varudris, which if you're not familiar, this card is really, really strong if you can put 2 level 10s on the board to actually get into it. So this card lets you detach a material to negate any effect, and then you can detach a second material to destroy a card on the field. If this card attacks, you can destroy a card on the field, and if this card is destroyed, you can destroy a card on the field. So it is a potential total of 4 disruptions. We're normally only probably going to get 2 out of it because we're not making it with that many materials, but it is just a very difficult thing to deal with without losing a bunch of cards. We play a Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max because this can be made off of 2 10s, and you can just attach a material to inflict 2,000 damage to your opponent. It also has 3,000 attacks, so it's just 5,000 damage represented on the board by making it, but even better than that, you can use it as the only Xyz material required to go into Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Juggernaut Liba. So Liba is for OTKs. It allows you to once per turn detach a material, gain 2,000 attack, but lock you into only attacking with Liba for the rest of the turn. That's okay because you can also attack with Liba a number of times per turn equal to how many materials it has plus 1. So if you make a Gustav Max, detach a material to burn, and then go into Liba, it has 2 materials at that point. You can detach 1 to make it 6,000 attack, and at that point it can attack twice with 6,000 attack. That's real good at just ending the game. It is just huge, and it's pretty easy to make in this deck. Then, if for some reason Liba's not good enough, we play a Zeus, so you can go into a Zeus with a single send everything from the board to the graveyard activation on it to hopefully survive the next turn. And then we also play one Typhon, just in case you get completely stopped from doing your combo. You can just use whatever guy you have to go into Typhon, bounce something, and then lock the opponent out of 3,000 plus monsters effects until they manage to get rid of Typhon. I'm personally a pretty firm believer that Typhon is a surrender button, but in this particular deck where if you can just buy 1 turn to get back to your turn, you get so much value that you can probably win from there, I think he's alright in this deck specifically. And that's going to be it for the actual deck. There are not a whole ton of big combos that you can do with this deck. It's more of like a individual high card quality sort of mid-range deck, but we'll go through a couple little ones here, and then I will see you again for closing thoughts. Alright, so now I'm going to show you the fun new Eldlich combo you can do with one card Delta of Invitation and any other spell or trap to send from the field to the graveyard for Eldlich himself. Here we go. So we're going to activate Delta, which lets us send Eldlich to the graveyard from deck, and then we can set our card, send it with Eldlich to bring him back and summon him, and then Delta can get us a token. Eldlich goes into Angel Kaido, and both the Angel Kaido and our token go into Flying Mary. That lets us get 2 Eldliches back, and we can overlay them into a Varudris, which is 2 disruptions on his own. The other 2 cards here are also follow-up for next turn, since Flying Mary can be used to destroy a card, and then also sent by Eldlich to bring him back and summon him again. And then Delta of Invitation allows us to make another token, which is, you know, a material of some kind. So this is 2 disruptions and follow-up, which is pretty cool. Cool. Alright, so now I'm going to show you a quick 2-card combo that you can do with Cursed Eldland and any of the Eldlich traps to send from hand to graveyard. Eldlixir is going to be your best because it gives you the most extension, but any of the other ones work on a similar principle. Let's get started. So we're going to activate Cursed Eldland, which lets us grab an Eldlich from deck to hand, and then we can send both cards from hand to the graveyard to send Cursed Eldland as well, but don't worry about the loss of the 3 resources, because that lets us send a Huaquero. Then we can banish the Eldlixir to set a Conquistador, and we can activate Eldlich to send the Conquistador to summon himself and go into Angel Kaido. And then at the end phase, both Huaquero and Conquistador are going to set 2 more traps, and that's going to be Eldlixir of the Exalted Golden Land and Eldlixir of Scarlet Sanguine, which on the opponent's turn lets us summon another Eldlich. And so this is just a big body, a bounce from the Golden Land, and then Angel Kaido here, if removed from the field, will trigger and get us an Eldlich the Mad Golden Lord, which is just a giant tower that can mind control stuff on our next turn. So it is a difficult to break board with 1 disruption, big guys, and another big guy ready to come if they mess up, which is pretty cool. We also have follow-up in the graveyard. Cool. Alright, now we're back with closing thoughts on our Golden Genesis deck. The first thing that I want to mention is that I'm not sure you want to be running these 2 engines together. They don't have a whole ton of synergy outside of adding an extra 6 2500 bodies for the Regenesis engine, and Regenesis kind of having some low-to-the-ground disruptions to complement the Eldlich's low-to-the-ground disruptions and recursion. Like, they kind of have similar game plans, and it does work out, but I'm not sure. Maybe you want to run Eldlich solo and just play a bunch more of the Golden Lands and Eldlixirs. Maybe you want to run Regenesis specifically with something else. I've seen people do like Dogmatica, Kashtira. I thought about doing Dogmatica for this one, but there's only like 1 thing in the whole deck that is 2500, so it does not add a whole lot of bodies. You kind of have to run at least the Bestials, but also Kashtira. Funny enough, you end up having fewer extra bodies at the magic number than you do in this deck, and this deck only runs the 3 Eldliches. But outside of that, it is really good at what it's trying to do. It does recur a ton of resources, it throws some difficult to interact with stuff on the board. Not a whole lot of decks are prepared to deal with non-targeted bounce coming out of Eldlixir. A lot of people don't realize that sending Angel Kaido to the graveyard, that can be destruction, card effect, sending, anything like that, which is a lot of removal in this game, just immediately gets you a tower that they then have to worry about as well, that is a much more powerful card than the Angel Kaido itself. It's also really fun to just play with giant cannons, like Super Dreadnought, Rail Cannon, Juggernaut Liba is just one of the most powerful feeling Timmy cards in the game, and not that many decks get to make it because it requires 2 level 10s, and not that many decks are focused on level 10s the way that Eldlich can put a few of them on board pretty easily. I also want to mention there is the glaring weakness of Graveyard Hate, which, considering Malice is currently considered better than Ryziel after the rotation, I don't think this is particularly well positioned. But if we end up in a meta at some point where the graveyard is less on lockdown, which, to be fair, a lot of the worst Graveyard Hate is banned or at 1 now, but still, we don't love running into the 1 of D-Shifter. That feels pretty bad. But if at some point D-Shifter gets completely banned and we just don't see much in the way of Graveyard Hate at all, I think this deck does get better, even though it's not horrid right now. Like, a lot of people played Bestials, and we don't love running into Bestials because they can banish our Eldliches. The Regenesis does have some targets, but none of the ones that we play can be targeted. We also have the weakness of only putting a few disruptions on the field each turn, though sometimes that can be enough if you have good matchup knowledge. And I think I like decks that reward matchup knowledge. If you know exactly where to hit specific decks, then, 3 disruptions is probably good enough as long as you are using it in the right places. So that's going to be it for this deck guide, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.